Earth did not end with fire or screaming. It ended with silence. For 3 seconds, every satellite went dark. Every signal died. Every screen across the planet froze. Then the sky cracked open, and humanity learned how small it truly was. The year was 2169, and Earth had finally healed itself. Wars were history lessons. Borders were lines on old maps. Cities were clean, bright, and alive. Oceans were blue again. Children learned astronomy instead of survival. Humanity believed it had survived its worst days. That belief lasted until something enormous blotted out the sun. Dr. Arjun Malhotra, senior orbital physicist, stood inside the Lunar Observation Array when the shadow passed over Earth. At first, he thought it was an eclipse. Then his instruments screamed. "That's not natural," he whispered. The object was not one object. It was thousands, vast black shapes sliding out of hyperspace like predators emerging from deep water. They formed a ring around Earth with terrifying precision. No warnings came. No message. No demand. Then the first beam struck. The city of Sao Neo, once home to 40 million people, vanished in a flash of white-green light. No explosion. No debris. Just absence. The land itself was erased, leaving a smooth, glowing scar in the crust of the planet. Across the globe, the same thing happened again and again. Cairo. Shanghai. Los Angeles. Berlin. The attackers did not target armies. They targeted life. Within the first hour, 6 billion people were dead. Underground, beneath the Himalayan emergency vault, Director Hannah Cole watched the casualty counterclimb faster than her mind could process. Her hands trembled, but her voice stayed calm. "Any response from them?" she asked. None of the technicians answered. There was nothing to say. Human weapons failed. Missiles disintegrated against alien shields. Nuclear detonations were swallowed like sparks in an ocean. The invaders' technology made Earth's greatest achievements look like toys. The attackers would later be named the Valari Dominion, though at the time, they did not bother to name themselves at all. They descended methodically. Forests burned. Oceans boiled. Atmosphere processors lowered oxygen levels over major continents, suffocating millions more without firing a single shot. They were not angry. They were efficient. In the ruins beneath Nairobi, Captain Elias Moreno pulled a terrified child into a collapsed metro tunnel as the sky above glowed red. He had been a peacekeeper once. Now he was just a man trying not to die. "They're not even looking at us," he muttered. "We're insects to them." Across Earth, less than 1% of humanity survived. They hid deep underground, in sealed vaults, caves, abandoned mines, anywhere the alien scanners could not easily penetrate. The Valari assumed the planet was finished. They were wrong. 6 months after the invasion, Dr. Arjun Malhotra stared at something that should not exist, a fragment of alien alloy pulled from a destroyed drone. It bent light. It absorbed energy. It rewrote physics as humans understood it. "This isn't just strong," Arjun said quietly. "It's intelligent." That was the moment everything changed. Humans had lost Earth's surface, but they had not lost their minds. Across the hidden world below ground, people began to study. Engineers, scientists, hackers, even artists and philosophers. Humans did what they always did when cornered. They learned. The Valari machines were powerful, but rigid. Their technology followed strict logic. Human thinking did not. Within 5 years, underground cities grew. Power grids were rebuilt using stolen alien energy principles. Children were born who had never seen the sun, raised on stories of a blue sky they would one day reclaim. Director Hannah Cole oversaw what became known as the Judgment Program, a silent, global effort to turn humanity's greatest weakness into its sharpest weapon. Improvisation, risk, creativity. Captain Moreno trained soldiers who learned not just how to fight, but how to adapt mid-battle. Human weapons were crude copies at first, then refined, then improved beyond their original designs. The Valari never noticed. They were busy harvesting Earth's core minerals. They believed resistance was impossible. Every species they had conquered before had broken completely. Humanity did not break. 20 years after the invasion, Dr. Arjun stood inside a massive underground hangar. Before him were ships, human ships, built with alien physics and human madness. They were asymmetrical, unpredictable, designed to break rules. They won't understand us, Arjun said. That's the point, Hannah replied. Above them, the Valari fleet drifted lazily in orbit, unaware that the planet they thought was dead was watching them from below, thinking, learning, and waiting. Earth had been wiped out. But judgment was coming. And humanity was about to remind the galaxy of one simple truth. Never assume humans are finished just because they are quiet. For 20 years, Earth remained quiet. To the Valari Dominion, the planet was nothing more than a resource site, damaged, tamed, and harmless. Their massive harvest towers drilled into the crust. Their ships floated in stable orbits. Their commanders logged Earth as pacified. Silence, after all, meant victory to them. Deep beneath the shattered surface, humanity learned a different meaning of silence. It was not surrender. It was patience. In the underground city of Aegis Prime, lights flickered across kilometers of steel corridors. This was not a bunker anymore. It was a world. Farms glowed under artificial suns. Water flowed through reclaimed filtration systems. Children laughed, quietly, carefully, but they laughed. And everywhere, people worked. Captain Elias Moreno walked through a training chamber where soldiers moved in controlled chaos. There were no straight lines, no rigid formations. Each unit practiced independent thinking. Orders were minimal. Decisions were fast. Human. Again, Elias said calmly. A simulated Valari drone descended from the ceiling, its shield humming. The soldiers did not fire immediately. They waited. One tossed a reflective shard into the air. Another adjusted frequency emitters. A third fired, not at the drone, but at the space beside it. The shield flickered. The drone collapsed in sparks. Elias nodded once. Good. Remember, never hit them where they expect. Nearby, Commander Lyra Chen, head of tactical innovation, watched silently. She had grown up underground. The sun was a myth to her. But the enemy was not. They rely on perfection, she said. That's why they fail. Elsewhere in Aegis Prime, Dr. Arjun Malhotra stood before a council of engineers, artists, linguists, and strategists. Humanity's leadership no longer looked like old governments. It looked like a mind made of many parts. We are not stronger than them, Arjun said. We are not faster. We are not more advanced. He paused. But we are unpredictable. He displayed a hologram of a Valari warship. Sleek. Symmetrical. Beautiful in a cold way. They believe technology must be stable to be effective. Humans don't think that way. We build things that shouldn't work, and then make them work anyway. One engineer smiled grimly. Controlled chaos. Exactly. The judgment program had reached its final stage. Human ships were ready. They were smaller than Valari vessels, but faster in short bursts. Their weapons were not stronger, but they were layered, staggered, and deliberately uneven. Every ship carried dozens of variations, not one standard system. To the Valari, this would look like madness. To humans, it was survival. High above Earth, aboard the Valari Command Vessel Ascendant Will, Overseer Kethrax reviewed routine reports. Energy extraction stable. No surface resistance. No orbital threats. Earth is compliant, one of his aides reported. Kethrax flexed his forearms thoughtfully. The species showed brief resistance. Inefficient. Emotionally driven. Shall we increase atmospheric thinning? The aide asked. No need. The remaining life will fade. He turned away from the display. Below him, hidden launch doors opened silently across the planet. In the Pacific Trench, magnetic locks disengaged. In the ruins of Siberia, rock shifted aside. Beneath the Andes, engines warmed for the first time. Admiral Sophia Rourke stood on the bridge of the human flagship Unbroken. Her hands were steady. Her voice was calm. "All fleets," she said. "This is it." Around her, screens showed dozens of underground launch points coming online. "For those who never saw the sky," she continued, "today you claim it." Launch alarms did not sound. There were no drums. No speeches broadcast across the world. Humanity rose in silence. The first human ship breached the atmosphere like a spear. Then another. Then hundreds. Valari sensors reacted seconds too late. "Overseer," a technician shouted. "Multiple unknown vessels emerging from the planet." Kethrax turned sharply. His mandibles tightened. "Impossible. Scan them." The screens filled with chaos. The ships did not fly in formations. They split, merged, vanished behind debris, reappeared at impossible angles. "What are they doing?" an officer demanded. Kethrax watched in growing unease. "They are improvising." The first engagement lasted 43 seconds. A Valari patrol ship fired. Its beam missed as a human vessel suddenly cut engines and drifted, letting inertia carry it beneath the shot. Another human ship exploded intentionally, its debris triggering a cascade of microbursts that overloaded Valari sensors. Then came the strike. Human weapons did not fire all at once. They fired in patterns that made no sense, until shields failed. A Valari cruiser ruptured, split open by weapons built from stolen physics and human audacity. "This is not a rebellion," Kethrax hissed. "This is war." On Earth's surface, human ground teams emerged like ghosts. They sabotaged harvest towers, hijacked power nodes, turned Valari machines against each other using hacked logic loops. Captain Elias led his unit through the wreckage of what used to be Madrid. Valari troops scrambled, confused by attacks that broke every known rule of combat. "They don't retreat," one Valari soldier transmitted in panic. "They adapt." By the end of the first hour, 3 Valari orbital ships were destroyed. By the end of the first day, Earth was no longer classified as compliant. In Aegis Prime, children gathered around screens, watching human ships dance among the stars. "Is that the sky?" one asked softly. "Yes," a teacher replied. "And we're taking it back." Far above, as alarms screamed and Valari formations collapsed, Overseer Kethrax finally understood his mistake. The humans had not been silent because they were weak. They had been silent because they were learning. And now, the storm had begun. The Valari Dominion had conquered dozens of worlds. None of them had fought back like this. Above Earth, space burned with wreckage. Broken Valari ships drifted in slow spirals, their perfect symmetry shattered. Human vessels moved through the chaos like living things, changing speed, altering vectors, vanishing behind debris only to strike from impossible angles. Admiral Sophia Rourke watched the battle unfold with quiet intensity. Her fleet was smaller. Her losses were higher. But the Valari were losing something far more valuable than ships. They were losing certainty. "Status," she said. "Valari command structure is fracturing," an officer replied. "They're trying to regroup, but their formations keep breaking." "Of course they do," Sophia said. "They've never had to think like this before." The Valari way of war was simple. Overwhelming force. Perfect coordination. Absolute control. It had always worked, until it met a species that treated rules as suggestions. On the surface, Captain Elias Moreno moved through the ruins of old Europe with his unit. The air was thick with smoke and alien machinery lay twisted and burning across the land. Valari soldiers were retreating, not in fear, but in confusion. "They're pulling back toward the towers," one of Elias's soldiers reported. "Let them," Elias replied. "That's where we want them." The towers were the heart of the occupation. Massive structures that processed Earth's resources and powered the Valari presence. They were also designed with one fatal flaw. They assumed the planet beneath them was dead. Human engineers had spent years studying the tower's foundations. Not to destroy them outright, but to change how they behaved. As Valari troops regrouped inside Tower 7, the ground beneath them shifted. Gravity fluctuated. Energy feeds reversed. Doors sealed shut. Then the tower began feeding power into itself. Inside, Valari commanders screamed orders as systems spiraled out of control. The tower did not explode. It collapsed inward, folding like a dying star. Elias watched from a distance as the structure vanished into the earth, leaving nothing but a deep, silent crater. "One tower down," he said calmly. Across the globe, the same scene played out again and again. In North America, human teams turned Valari drones into mines. In Africa, underground rivers were redirected to flood alien installations. In Asia, Valari communication hubs began broadcasting false commands, pitting units against each other. The Dominion's greatest strength, its centralized control, became its greatest weakness. Far above Earth, aboard the battered command vessel Ascendant Will, Overseer Kethrak struggled to impose order. "This species does not fight correctly," one officer said, panic creeping into his voice. "They do not follow patterns." "They are a disease," Kethrak snapped. "An anomaly." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. This was not an anomaly. This was humanity. Dr. Arjun Malhotra stood in the core of Aegis Prime, surrounded by screens showing battle data from every front. His face was pale. Not from fear, but from understanding. "We're winning battles," he said quietly to Director Hannah Cole. "But that's not enough." Hannah nodded. "The Dominion will send reinforcements." "Yes," Arjun said. "And when they do, they'll come prepared." Humanity could not outproduce the Valari, could not match their empire ship for ship. This war would not be won by strength alone. It would be won by ideas. "Then we changed the war," Hannah said. They activated Project Echo. For years, human linguists and psychologists had studied intercepted Valari signals. Their language, their command logic, their cultural assumptions. Now, humanity spoke back. Across Valari communication channels, a message began to spread, not as a threat, not as propaganda, but as data. Reports of human victories exaggerated just enough to create doubt. Simulated distress calls from Valari units that did not exist. False orders that caused fleets to hesitate at critical moments. The Dominion began to question itself. On Valari worlds far from Earth, commanders argued. Analysts disagreed. Confidence fractured. Back in orbit, a human ship deliberately allowed itself to be captured. Its crew died. But its systems did not. When the Valari attempted to dissect the vessel, it activated. Not as a bomb. As a message. Every Valari screen aboard the ship lit up with recorded human faces. Men. Women. Children. Old and young. A simple statement repeated in dozens of languages. "You thought we were finished." The ship then erased itself from existence. Overseer Kethrax stared at the empty space where the vessel had been. For the first time in his long career, something unfamiliar settled into his thoughts. Fear. "These humans do not seek survival alone," he said slowly. "They seek to be remembered." Below, on Earth's surface, something equally important was happening. The sky was changing. For the first time in decades, sunlight pierced the cloud of alien machinery. Atmosphere processors fell. The air grew clearer. Plants, hardy, mutated survivors, began to grow through the cracks of ruined cities. Children in underground cities were brought to surface domes for the first time. A young girl named Mila pressed her hand against the glass as sunlight touched her skin. "So this is real," she whispered. "Yes," her mother said softly. "We're taking it back." Human losses were enormous. Every victory came with a cost. Entire units were wiped out. Cities were never coming back. But humanity did not fight for the past. It fought for the future. As the first Valari reinforcements entered the system, they did not find a broken world. They found a trap. Earth was no longer prey. Earth was a proving ground. And humanity was teaching the galaxy a lesson written in fire and adaptation. If you push humans to the edge of extinction, they don't disappear. They evolve. The Valari reinforcements arrived in force. From the edge of the solar system, massive war fleets dropped out of hyperspace, ships larger than cities, weapons capable of cracking moons. To the Dominion, this was how rebellions ended: overwhelming power, absolute finality. To humanity, it was confirmation. "They're afraid now," Admiral Sophia Rourke said as new contacts filled the tactical display. "They wouldn't send this much if they weren't." The human fleet repositioned immediately. No straight defensive lines. No last stands. Ships scattered, hid, retreated, on purpose. To the Valari commanders, it looked like panic. Overseer Kethrax watched from the bridge of a newly arrived flagship, his confidence slowly rebuilding. "They are running," he declared. "As expected." He gave the order to advance. That was mistake number one. The humans led them inward, deeper into Earth's orbital space, where debris fields from earlier battles still drifted. Broken satellites. Shattered stations. Wrecked Valari cruisers. To Valari sensors, it was clutter. To humans, it was terrain. Human ships vanished into the debris, cutting engines, masking heat signatures, using gravity instead of thrust. Valari formations pushed forward, shields raised, weapons charged. Then space itself turned hostile. Human minds, small, almost invisible, activated not by proximity, but by decision patterns. They waited until Valari ships committed to specific maneuvers. Then they struck. Explosions rippled through the Dominion fleet. Not enough to destroy them, but enough to disrupt formation. Shields flared unevenly. Command signals lagged. Admiral Rourke leaned forward. "Now." From the darkness behind Earth's moon, humanity revealed its final surprise. The Hammerfall array. Not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a network, dozens of mass drivers built into lunar rock, disguised as mining equipment during the occupation. Each had one purpose: throw the moon's anger into space. Chunks of accelerated rock, wrapped in energy fields, launched at relativistic speeds. Not aimed directly at ships, but at the spaces between them, forcing Valari vessels to maneuver. Every movement cost energy. Every correction exposed weakness. Human ships surged in, striking precisely where shields faltered. One by one, Valari capital ships fell, not in glorious explosions, but in silent decompression and drifting wreckage. On Earth's surface, the final Valari strongholds began to collapse. Captain Elias Moreno led his forces into what had once been the Valari Central Command Complex. The air was thick with smoke and static. Alien soldiers fought desperately now, not as conquerors, but as survivors. "They're breaking," one of Elias's officers said. "They don't know how to lose," Elias replied. "That makes it worse for them." Inside the core chamber, Elias came face to face with a Valari commander. The alien stood taller, stronger, its armor still intact. It raised its weapon, but hesitated. "You should not exist," the alien said through a translator. Elias didn't raise his gun immediately. "You came to our home and decided we weren't worth understanding." The Valari fired. Elias moved first. The battle ended in seconds. Across the planet, Valari resistance collapsed. Towers shut down. Ships attempted emergency jumps, only to find human interference scrambling their navigation. Dr. Arjun Malhotra watched the data scroll past, his expression unreadable. "We're winning," someone said beside him. "Yes," Arjun answered. "But now comes the hardest part." "What's that?" "Deciding who we become after this." Because humanity was no longer the same species that had been invaded. It was sharper, harder, more dangerous. And the galaxy was watching. Back aboard the Valari flagship, Overseer Kethrax stood amid chaos. Fires burned along the bridge. Reports flooded in, losses beyond calculation. Entire fleets gone. "This cannot be happening," he whispered. For the first time, a human transmission cut through Dominion channels without distortion. Admiral Sophia Rourke appeared on Valari screens. Her face was calm. Her eyes were cold. "You attacked us without warning," she said. "You killed billions. You took our world because you thought you could." She leaned closer to the camera. "You were wrong." Kethrax stared back. "If you destroy us," he said, Others will come. Sophia nodded. We know. That was mistake number 2. Human ships breached the flagship's defenses not by force, but by boarding. Human soldiers poured in, fighting room to room. Valari security systems failed as human hackers rewrote them on the fly. Kethrax was captured alive. When he was brought to Earth, standing on soil he had declared dead, he finally understood the depth of his error. Humanity had not just defended itself. It had redefined the rules. Children now stood beneath open skies. Plants spread across ruined cities. Oceans cooled. The air healed slowly, painfully, but it healed. Earth was scarred, but alive. In the underground cities, people emerged blinking into sunlight for the first time in decades. Some cried. Some laughed. Some simply stood in silence. Humanity had paid a terrible price. But it had survived. And survival, for humans, was never the end of the story. As news of the Dominion's defeat spread across known space, other civilizations began to reassess everything they thought they knew. Earth was no longer a victim. Earth was a warning. And in the silence after the storm, one truth echoed across the stars. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Never mistake silence for surrender. And never, ever underestimate humanity. The war for Earth was over. The war for humanity's place in the galaxy had just begun. The Valari flagship burned in Earth's orbit, its broken hull glowing like a dying star. Around it drifted the remains of an empire that had believed itself eternal. Human ships held position, not in triumph, not in celebration, but in vigilance. They had learned that survival never truly rested. On the surface of Earth, dawn rose over ruined cities for the first time in decades. Sunlight touched cracked stone and twisted metal. Wind moved freely again without alien machines choking the sky. The planet breathed, slowly, painfully, but it breathed. Admiral Sophia Rourke stood on an open plateau overlooking the remains of what had once been Geneva. Around her stood representatives of humanity's new world, engineers, soldiers, teachers, farmers, children who had never known a peaceful sky until now. Behind reinforced containment fields knelt Overseer Kethrax. The Valari leader looked smaller here. Fragile. Earth's gravity weighed on him, just as the truth did. You defeated us, Kethrax said quietly. But your species is still insignificant in the greater galaxy. Sophia looked at him for a long moment. We were insignificant once, she replied. Not anymore. Dr. Arjun Malhotra stepped forward. His voice carried no anger, only certainty. You didn't lose because you were weaker, he said. You lost because you didn't understand us. Kethrax lifted his gaze. Explain. Arjun gestured toward the people around him. We don't survive by being perfect. We survive by failing, adapting, and trying again. You build empires that never change. We build mistakes, and learn from them. Silence followed. Then Kethrax asked the question that would echo through history. What will you do with us? For a moment, the future balanced on a knife's edge. Humanity had the power now. The weapons. The experience. The rage. They could erase the Valari as easily as the Valari had once erased Earth cities. Captain Elias Moreno thought of the child he had saved years ago in the metro tunnels. Dr. Arjun thought of the billions lost. Admiral Rourke thought of the generations still to come. We will judge you, Sophia said at last. But not the way you judged us. The Valari Dominion was dismantled, not annihilated. Their conquered worlds were freed. Their war technology dismantled under human oversight. Their leaders, including Kethrax, were imprisoned, not executed. Forced to watch as the species they had dismissed rebuilt something stronger than an empire. A civilization. Earth became something new. Humanity did not return to its old ways. There were no nations reborn as before. No borders carved from fear. The underground cities expanded upward, merging with the ruins. Forests were replanted. Oceans healed. Artificial skies were replaced with real ones. Children born after the war learned history early, not to glorify violence, but to understand its cost. They learned why humans fought. They learned why humans won. Years passed. Human ships no longer hid in debris fields. They traveled openly, sleek, strange vessels that carried human unpredictability across the stars. Where they went, other species watched carefully. Some feared them. Some admired them. All respected them. When first contact came again, this time with cautious, peaceful civilizations, it was humanity that spoke first. Not with threats. With stories. They told of Earth's fall. Of silence. Of patience. Of judgment earned, not given. They told the galaxy one simple rule. We don't seek domination. But we will never accept extinction. On Earth, Admiral Rourke stood at a memorial overlooking a rebuilt ocean coastline. Names stretched across stone walls, billions of them. The price humanity had paid. A young boy stood beside her. He had been born underground. Is it over? He asked. Sophia looked out at the sea, at ships lifting peacefully into the sky. It will never be over, she said gently. But now, we choose how the next chapter begins. Far away, in the depths of space, the story of Earth spread. A story of a species that refused to die quietly. A story of creativity turned into weaponry. A story of silence that became judgment. The galaxy learned what the Valari learned too late. Destroying humanity does not end humanity. It forges it. And from the ashes of a broken world, humans rose, not as conquerors, not as gods, but as something far more dangerous. Survivors who remember. Thinkers who adapt. And a civilization that will never again be caught unprepared. Earth had been wiped out. And in response, humanity delivered absolute judgment. Not just to its enemies, but to the universe itself. HFY.